welcome to the second edition of the interview series hosted by GDG Inspire. My name is Giulia Dino Giacomelli, and I'm the founder of GDG Inspire. Every month, we deliver the StratCom Peel, our newsletter that features one interview with an expert and one review of a specific StratCom-related matter. This month, we have invited Professor Arije Antinori from the Università La Sapienza in Rome. Arije and I met in the context of the EENet, so the European Expert Network on Terrorism. The network aims to bring together the law enforcement, intelligence, and academic community to exchange on latest trends on terrorism issues. Arije is very well known in the community of preventing, countering violent extremism and counter-terrorism, where his extensive studies on what he defines as the cyber-social ecosystem, where he combines his expertise on terrorism, sociology, and technology. So, Arije, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to see you.
Good afternoon.
To start with, I would like you to explain in a few words what you mean by cyber-social ecosystem.
Okay. Thank you for having me. So, as you know, I'm very attached to this concept. I proposed it years ago to make understand the increasing complexity of the scenario that I monitor daily in relation to terrorism and violent extremism. Different phenomena, actors, modi operandi, and so on. So the cyber-social ecosystem refers to a complex, interconnected network that integrates digital, social, and physical elements, such as, for instance, digital media, social media platforms, both mainstream and fringe ones, cyber-physical systems, gaming communities, infospheres, socioeconomic structures, and so on, native and adaptive culture. This is the point. And they interact dynamically to create a no more virtual versus real environment where technosocial change affect technology and human interactions, as well as socialization that coexist and influence each other, especially reshaping the human experience in terms of perception, cognition, emotions, values, beliefs, and definitely trust.
You define it as cyber-social ecosystem. And from what I hear, it's of course very much related to the online, so to say. What's the impact in the offline? Is there an impact in the offline? And I mean, more generally, how does the online and offline kind of interplay through this concept of cyber-social ecosystem?
Yes, there is a living connection between online and offline. We are in, let's say, on the path to the on-life existence. So it means that the cyber-social ecosystem is a multi-layered and dynamic environment that integrates digital, social, and physical elements. So there's no difference between people. Let's say people confront each other online and offline. It means that there is an impact, a direct impact between what you do online to offline and vice versa. So it means that that people are meantime living their own life online and offline. So I call it the cyber-social ecosystem because at that moment we are still focused on the cyber concept, but in in a few years we will lose the word cyber, and it will become the social ecosystem. So together offline and online experience. But the point is the centrality of a brand new human experience, and integrated one. So it is not just a matter of, let's say, consuming something, let's say, sharing contents, or training, or discussing, being contact, but is based on both cognition and emotions. This is the point.
This concept, it can apply to different social manifestations and different individual behaviors. Of course, what we are mostly interested in, I think both of us, is when it comes to terrorism or extremism threat. How does the concept of cyber social ecosystem relates to the current understanding of extremism?
So it relates to the current concept of violent extremism and terrorism, because it highlights the complex interplay between technology and social behavior, which can influence the spread and or impact of extremist ideology. And I can say mainly in terms of global connectivity, amplification of extreme narratives, visual storytelling, and so on, social dynamic, identity seeking and identity creation process, radicalization process, and online hate spreading. So there are many connection and impact on the cyber social, on violent extremism in terms of cyber social ecosystem.
I would like us to dive into the topic of this month's newsletter, namely the elections.
Oh.
So we are in July, 1 month therefore after the EU elections. We would like to look back and try to draw some conclusions that relate to strategic communications. So what we know is that elections have always been a catalyzer for extremists, but more in general, malign actors, because the public attention is higher, and therefore what happens in a democracy is that there are attempts from political parties to polarize the debates, and this dynamic is actually then eventually weaponized to push for extremist messaging and to seek an additional occasion for recruitment and also drive wedges in our society. Based on your research and observation, in the run to the last EU elections, what was the main challenge affecting the cyber social ecosystem that you saw emerging?
Yeah, so I can consider as a main challenge the endemic disinformation, because we are far from just fake news. There has been an increase of sophistication in disinformation and misinformation campaigning. And I want to stress the fact that we must look at not just one-shot operation, but mainly long-term and low-intensity campaigns, which is one of the main challenge, which was and is one of the main challenge in this election, not only at EU level, but also considering the upcoming US election, for instance. Then the cross-border influence operations, and I mean foreign information manipulation and interference, the so-called FIMI, cognitive warfare tactics and methods that are used both by symmetric and asymmetric actors, the exploitation of ambiguous and very usable contents, just like memes in terms of mimetic warfare, for instance. So the interconnection between once again symmetric and asymmetric actors. And another relevant issue in this election is represented by cybersecurity threats. There is an increase in general, and I mean not just very sophisticated ones, but the traditional ones. So DDoS attack, data breaches, or ransomware attacks with the aim of exploiting vulnerabilities, of spreading insecurity, and so in a way to influence the let's say the behavior of voters, but mainly the most relevant innovation in terms of malicious actors that we can see in this election is the malicious use of artificial intelligence. I mean, MUI. I explored this phenomenon from the let's say socio-cognitive point of view. So not just in terms of the implementation of cyber attacks, but the way that malicious actor can use this kind of technology to develop their own capacity to reshape reality, to produce catchy contents in the light of deep fakes, deep audio, synthetic media, and propaganda in general. And it can increase the ability to mask, to and let's say automate processes while manipulating the cognitive sphere, facilitated the influence of decision, using tactics such as information overload, information disorder, polarization, emotional reaction to strongly influence the human behavior, and sometimes trigger to violent action against others. This is the main. These are the main points in terms of malicious innovation that I can see looking at this election.
Thanks for pointing this out. I mean, indeed, I was about to ask you a question about this, because the last time we saw each other, you did deliver the presentation on the cyber social weaponization of generative artificial intelligence, and specifically you showed how generative AI, by simply altering and filtering images, can trigger different emotions, facilitate, as you correctly described, the malign actors' promotion of highly emotional messages. Question I have on this point is about regulation, in the sense that, of course, what we are observing is that from policy regulatory perspective at the EU, but also at the national level, there are more and more initiatives, right, of both hard law and self-regulation that are multiplying to kind of stem the abuse of generative AI. We also know that malign actors are very good at circumventing the rules that we set up. So I ask you to have a bit of a, to take the malign actor's hat, so to say, so to wear it. And can we already anticipate the impact of these initiatives, in the sense, what will be the next step taken by malign actors to overcome these new rules and constraints, if we are able to make this anticipation?
Okay, so thank you for your question, because first of all, I would like to stress the fact that we are in a never seen before scenario at the UN level, but also at the global level, because these elections were conducted in an overlapping crisis scenario, and we have to consider that we are living in a interconnected global cyber social ecosystem. So it means that everything can impact us, something that is very far from us in terms of geopolitics, in terms of conflicts, can also can have a huge impact on our day life. And
do you want to give us an example of what you've just said? What is, in your opinion, like a global crisis that is far away from us that actually has an impact?
yes, we are facing two relevant crises. We are directly or indirectly involved in them. The first one is the Russia-Ukrainian war, started from the military invasion of Ukraine by Russian army, and the second one is the conflict between Israel and Hamas, and it has an impact. Just to go back to your one of your first questions, in terms of a connection between offline and online, we see how these conflicts can be relevant within the violent extremism and terrorism infospheres, as well as in a more general way in the cyber social ecosystem of online aid, because they are able to motivate, to trigger, to let's say inspire individuals and groups to violent action, and it means the rising phenomenon of anti-system and anti-government extremism, for instance, which is a cross-border phenomenon. So the impacts of something that is far from us is immediately in our house, in our daily life. And there is another important point, which is given by the fact that AI is becoming a daily technology. So we use it to do a lot of things, and the same technology, and now I'm focusing on generative AI, is used in the movie system, in advertising, in music, in many fields that we use as a relevant part of our life, of the life of our children, for instance. So for the first time in the human history, we are dealing with a very pervasive, with the exploitation of a very pervasive, but at the same moment a very friendly technology, which can be exploited and weaponized against human, but mainly in terms of perception of reality, on misrepresentation of reality. And what I consider very relevant at this point is the fact that we are used to focus on the potential sophisticated potential development of highly sophisticated technology. So the sophisticated use of AI technology, but the problem is that meantime we must focus on the let's say on sophisticated plan to use very cheap and very user-friendly and very app-based technology. So the ones that we use every day to attack people in terms of creating a fake reality, of representing turmoils in a system in which we cannot find them, or in weaponizing people, weaponizing the public debate, weaponize confrontation between politicians, and so on. And as a side effect of this process, there is the fact that some political parties and some politicians are using the same toxic, the same let's say, divisive and aggressive contents and narratives that were created in extremism and violent extremism, to create contents that can be impactful, considering the need to promote their own political message, their own political vision within a huge community of voters. And another problem is that we used to look at mainstream platform to identify the seeds or the trees that growing up about this phenomenon. But the problem is that we are moving, we are clearly moving in the land of not of fragmented community in terms of a new way to live the cybersocial, to live within the cybersocial ecosystem. It means a change in perspective, looking at the evolution of the threat in a converging scenario, in which we can see violent extremism together with disinformation, FIMI, malicious use of artificial intelligence, everything intersected and everything intersecting, and everything overlapping and converging. And it will cause a revolution in terms of, for instance, definition of public and national security, as well as EU security and global security. So we will have to explore this rising phenomena and try to integrate, to put together our knowledge from different fields, not just from the technological perspective. That's why we have to move on. We started from cybersecurity, but now we must focus more and more on cyber-social security. It means that the human being is let's say, is the center of our ecosystem, and we have to protect him or her, to protect people, and to maintain peace, because it means protect democracy. This is the point from my personal perspective.
I think, I mean, you touched upon at least 3 points that I would like to highlight. I think the first one is the shift from, I'm using my own words, but you can correct me. I mean, of course, the shift from a collective to an individual threat. By first social media and now AI being more and more mainstream. So everyone and almost everyone will be using AI in the next, I don't know how many years, but not many years. Mm-hmm. So that creates an individual vulnerability in the event this technology is abused. So in terms of prevention, I would expect that this is one challenge. The second one is how much the poly-crisis situation led to a complex, fragmented scenario that tests traditional boundaries of national security. Mm-hmm. I think this is something that at GTG Inspire we really advocate for, the fact that even categories like national security and defense, when we talk about disinformation is both a threat for national security and defense. And yet, from an architectural perspective, we've seen governments being rather slow in kind of connecting the dots of these two words. We still talk about internal and external dimension, but the threat is much more fragmented, yes, but also at the same time melted together. As you were saying, there are so many links between cybersecurity, social affairs, hate speech, foreign interferences. If you were a terrorist, what would be your way to circumvent the regulation that is becoming stricter and stricter at for the developers?
I agree with you, and I think that the point is that we maybe we will have to consider violent extremism and extremists and terrorists as more and more as a visual storyteller. So it means that this kind of actor will be more and more able to engage, to gamify conflict, to weaponize people throughout, let's say, ridiculous but violent contents, to motivate people throughout online gaming, transforming conflict between people in the street as a sort of video game, and feeding feeding the narratives more and more by dystopian vision of life that are more and more fictionable. So something that you can see represent in media. I think that the visual threat is the point, because the technology now is able to create copies of reality, or to create a new reality, which is which can be perceived as something natural, as the reality in terms of life, and or represent the future in the same way. So can make possible that people have an immediate and a disintermediated representation of their potential future in a very threatened way. It means that in this way, malicious actors can push the reaction of people against institutions and against target that they selected, that they decide to select it for their own need. So it means that I agree with you when you say that the threat is more based on individual let's say vulnerabilities and perspectives. So that's why, for instance, we move from vulnerable people to susceptible people. It means that you can more activate them in the realm of emotional warfare, for instance. But we have also to look at communities, at groups, at movement in a completely different way, which is the connective one. This is the point. I always want to stress this huge difference, and this a sort of paradigmatic revolution, because we used to see collective entities that started from vis-a-vis or face-to-face experience, and then decide to do something to let's say to translate their way to conflict in the online space. But nowadays we have to consider brand new categories of actors, and it will be everything will be like this in the future. So connective identities, it means that they create their own identity online, and they decide to act in the field with not just let's say sharing the final goal to be achieved, sharing the main purpose of their of the conflict, but in a very magmatic way. So sometimes they decide to participate in this action. Some other time they decide to not connect offline to take part in this initiative, and it make the capacity to anticipate this kind of threat very difficult, very hard in terms of indicators, and it means new perspective in risk assessment, in threat assessment, and in all the fields connected to the capacity of strongly understand the nature of malicious and or hostile entities. And in a context, sorry, just to conclude, in a very flexible and changing environment in which the DNA of well-known actors can change because of the opportunity to attack, because the opportunity to engage new audiences. So in a very adaptive environment from the point of view of criminal actors in general, but violent extremists and terrorists in particular.
What is the role of ideology in the theory of the cyber social ecosystem?
Ideology is more from my point of view. Ideology in the cyber social ecosystem is more connected and related to culture. This is the point. And that's why we experience, we started 25, more or less 25 years ago, we started trying to understand the meaning of following, for instance. Why the follower was so relevant in spreading violent content, in creating the, let's say, in reinforcing the violent narratives. And now we can understand that the battle for hearts and minds is more in the field of culture instead of the one of ideology. That's why we are increasingly facing, for instance, salad bar ideologies, pseudo ideologies, patchwork ideologies. Something that we are not sure that we can consider ideologies, because they are not connected on the traditional ones in terms of let's say the history of political sciences, but they are impactful in terms of value set. It means that are more and more culturable. I don't know if I can use this concept, but transformable into culture. That's why the culture of hate, the culture of terror is spreading all over the world. And that's why it is, and we have to consider that it's easy to transform a culture, to make a culture impactful in terms of interest, for instance, involving young adults, involving teenagers, preteens, and so on, because you don't have to focus a lot on rules of the system of rules, on the tradition linked to this ideology and so on. You just have to create an engaging message supported by a visual storytelling campaigning, very actual and very spreadable, just like memes, and you can transform the violence into something more close to cartoons, to TV series, so something that in a certain sense is based on irony, but it's a black irony. It's a dark, sorry, irony in terms of hidden messages. And
so it's easier to sell,
yeah,
and it's more adaptable to current situations.
yes, for
from
sure.
from what you're saying. But it takes less to convince people to adhere to a culture than to an ideology.
You
But
don't need
also,
sorry, to be trained. You don't
Mhm.
need to read books to understand what does it mean, a system of roles, of functions. What does it mean, hierarchy? Because it's a very horizontal message, so everyone can do it. And this could represent, let's say, an increasing of lone actors attacks, for instance. And now you have the technology to interconnect them. In years ago, I talked about swarm wolf. In the form of swarm, you can connect them, and now you have the technology to get their own interest, to involve them in create contents. For instance, with the generative AI, is very easy to do it, and you can do it without any problem. And another problem connected to this one, another very important issue connected to this one, is that the endemic disinformation is affecting the way that we understand, that we can understand the difference between news and opinions. And ambiguous content are based on opinions, not news. This is the problem. So that's why I'm very concerned about the fact that that, for instance, politicians are using the same. Some politicians are starting to use the same strategies and tactics. This is a losing game. This is a threat for democracy in future. We must invest on AI literacy, on digital literacy, we have to improve the capacity of young people to understand the complexity, to use the tools that are the tools of their own generation, without recreating difference between generations, for instance. That's why I don't like so much the concept of Gen Z terrorism, because I think that we can find different way to engage people, different vulnerabilities connected to the identity creating process and so on, the impact of the social media, and all the things related to that, but it's not connected to a generational perspective and or characteristic.
It's more transversal.
Yeah.
Yes. Arije, to conclude, do you have books, podcasts, articles, websites, newsletters that you follow and that you'd like to recommend to readers and viewers of this channel?
So there are many interesting products from this point of view, but I would like to suggest some, let's say, to go back to the past. Because, for instance, when we talk about hostile entities, the exploitation of proxy actors, and so what I call the proxyverse, and everything connected from this point of view to Stratcom and so on, I strongly suggest to read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. So we are in the 5th century before Christ, but it is very, very important because it's a way to start thinking about process and actors, to be very to pay attention to main characteristics and vulnerabilities. It means what I say, disrupting to anticipate. Another very interesting book is Apocalittici ed integrati by Umberto Eco. I think it's Apocalypse Postponed, if I'm not wrong. is a 60 years old book. The author, as you know, is the same of The Name of the Rose and other important books, but is very, very important because it talks about dichotomy. So we are pro technology or against technology. We can be in one team or the other team, but the problem nowadays is that AI is in everything. So this is another question that needs answer. This needs proper answers, and this book can help us move in. Let's say moving to strong dichotomies into complexity, and then an interesting novel by a great US novelist, which is Don DeLillo. The book is a 1978 book, is A Running Dog, and I suggest it because it's a fiction. It's a fiction novel, but it is very connected to true, and I think that the point in terms of security for the future is the post-truth effect in time of endemic disinformation. So I don't want to say something more about it, but it's a very interesting.
Let's not spoil it more. Thanks a lot. It was great to host this interview and to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Ciao.